Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D, where we dive deeply and help you wake up to the essence of what it means to live a real, authentic, affluent life. Beyond the balance sheets, the bank accounts, the private jets, the political offices, into the realm of inner wealth and personal power. I'm Sendra D, your companion guide on this trajectory of truthful self-mastery as we celebrate your individuality and your sovereignty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. Wow. Let me begin by saying this is a special episode because after a lot of thought, I started realizing that I hadn't paused. I hadn't paused to breathe and process and appreciate the last 3 months. This journey that began with fear, and as the first episode was titled From Fear to Love. And since May 19th, 2024, I have been growing in love and appreciation for you, the audience, for my guest, fantastic guest, for myself, most of all, for the courage to go out on a limb and trust the wisdom within, to know that this was meant to be. What I mean is, it was meant to be because way before this microphone came to exist in my world, it came to be that I had to go through everything that seemed to be an obstacle, some hurdle that I had to go through to become who I am today. I am the daughter of Amy and Cecilia Dorcé. Yes, of course, on a human level, that's apparent for those of you who know me. And I had a brother and a sister, Karine and Patrick. That's apparent in the human sense. But I have a deep understanding that everything that was laid out on this journey for me was orchestrated way before my birth. And I know some of you, of course, on the, those who are passionate about politics and also business are going to say, oh my goodness, she's going to dive into the spiritual. How can I not? How can I not dive into the spiritual, knowing my journey, knowing this 25 years of sobriety, of choosing to have a substance-free lifestyle, which is amazing. I mean, those of you who grew up with me knew that I was a very materialistic and self-absorbed individual. My first love was fashion, and I was a fashion designer, and everything in my world spoke of labels and in high-end, bespoke exclusivity and just fun. And I realized that if I hadn't directed my trajectory, it was not going to end well for me. So this is not something to doom and gloom, but I am here to celebrate me. I'm here to celebrate you, all of you, the audience, the guest, myself. We've been on this for 3 months together. We have had some fantastic times. Thank you so much for your likes, your comments. Even if it's just one matters so much more. There's the power of one. And I'm hoping to be the one in your experience that makes a difference, because I do say that I feel this inner longing to be a part of the experience for those who are looking to grow. My mother said to me the other day, she said she is sending good thoughts to those who want to change. You really have to want to change for it to change. Of course, those of you who are in recovery or been around someone in recovery, you know that the first step is to actually acknowledge that there is something that needs changing. And it doesn't have to be substance. It doesn't have to be something that is detrimental to, how can I say, the psyche, but of the collective. But it has to be this process within. For me, on a daily basis, I take my inventory to decide how I'm going to move forward if the tools I used yesterday are the tools that I want to carry over today. But because every day is an opportunity for you to actually transform and recreate your life and recreate who you are. And I've seen it's done so many times. If you go to the introductory video on my channel, I talk about transformation. And I do feel like I am that little caterpillar who had to go through a lot of pain in order for me to get the wings. And in my first video, I talked about being a little bird whose wings were broken because my sister passed on and my father passed on within 11 months of each other. And I thought I would never breathe again. I would never fly again, except the flight that I took and the flight that was fueled by those experiences are priceless. Unprecedented, priceless, better than I ever imagined. I mean, audience, where was your fuel? Where's your fuel? What really was the catalyst for you to transform? Well, for me, it really was my sister's passing, my father's passing, and my brother's passing. My two siblings were my heart, and they were more like my parents because my parents were very busy living the diplomatic life. And that's not to say that they were not good parents. My parents were fantastic. They had their flaws. Of course, they have their own trauma. My father was a military attaché and a general. Imagine that working for a government that actually was under scrutiny constantly from the United States government. And being a diplomat in Washington could not have been easy. Those three-letter agencies constantly on your back trying to eavesdrop on what you are doing. Yeah, I say eavesdrop because, that's what they do. They want to get a hedge on the opponent, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. But that's really what governments do. But I'm not here to talk politics today, though I could actually contribute a lot to that conversation. But I'm going to really talk about the journey it's been for me. So, on the first episode, on this trajectory that I have been on, we started, of course, I'm all finance and all business and politics. And so we went on, we started talking about my first episode, I went from fear to love. In the second episode, I talked about emotional intelligence, which is powerful, a powerful dynamic, which I see is lacking in our current discourse because people are just reacting at this point and not really sort of going within to figure out what's the best strategy forward, not the best bomb to drop, but truly, how is my action going to affect the whole? How is my conversation, my discourse going to impact humanity for good? And I do feel that it is lacking, not because it's not existent, but only are always trying to get more clickbaits. They're trying to attract the masses because my podcast is for the select few. Those of you who are inspired and encouraged to walk the line of do unto others as they would do unto you. My podcast is for you because I'm not just a finance and well versed in politics, but I really could be for you or not. I don't subscribe to any religion. I have gone through all of them. I study Christian Science. I practice Vipassana meditation. I was raised Methodist, but the guidance is within. The guidance is within. And I feel that deep within, that is why everything that I've loved, everyone that I've loved has been taken from me. My mother's still here, but no one else on the planet really speaks to me the way these people who have passed on, my Aunt Renee, my cousin Jules, my cousin Raymond, and my grandparents. My mother is a pillar of strength for me, and she is by my side. She's been by my side ever since, forever, right? She gave birth to me. And if you didn't know, the doctor did tell her not to have me. Well, I did bring some joy into the Dorcé family. We were a team, as I said, in Washington, D.C. and Haiti. A lot of trauma, a lot of drama, because we were very high profile in Washington, D.C. and the Haitian community. But and then also in Haiti, most people alive or dead from the time I was born, I'm thinking from till now, knew my father because he was one of the best military men in Haiti. And a lot of people don't know him because he did not make headlines. He was there to serve. And that's what he taught me. My parents were an example of service for me. They met in church. They loved each other from the time they were 16 years old. They married at 26. And all those women that came after my mother, well, good luck to you because my dad said she's the only one. And so there was a lot of trauma and drama around that too. It's interesting how some of these cultures, people just feel compelled to take possession of someone else's beloved. I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that. In my days of very active alcoholism, I have trespassed on other people's properties, and I'm not proud of that, but it is what it is. And I'm not that person who did those things. And I was very afraid to start this podcast because I knew I would have to be completely honest about who I am because there's no way for me to inspire people if I am not going to bring out my dirty laundry, because somebody would call me out and say, well, you're talking about this. And then, well, remember when you did this? Well, yeah, I have friends who have evidence of things that I've done that I'm not so proud of. But at the end of the day, I cleaned up that side of the street and I made apologies to everyone. There are still some people who deliberately feel that I still have something they want. I don't know. Maybe it's the Dorsey name. Some of them change their name to Dorcé just because they want to be part of the family. Let me tell you, Dorcé is not that unique in Haiti. All I know is that that's the Dorcé name that was on my birth certificate. And there are other people that took possession pictures of my father. They still have them on their Facebook pages. God bless you because my father gave me his name. And you know what? I'm not going to rant about these people because they're irrelevant. So I keep a smile on my face because I'm like, my goodness, if people could just understand that who they are is who they are. They don't have to take from anyone. They don't have to pretend to be someone they're not. They just can be authentically themselves. Planet Earth would be so much better. Whether you are taking from another on a small scale, photo albums from my family home, or on a larger scale, resources from Haiti, other governments who want our resources. Whatever it is, it's not yours. You can't take it. So that's my message. That is all tied into emotional intelligence. So we move on from that part. And then I started having guests. I had Richard Mason, who's fantastic, who I've known for over 20 years and is an amazing fund manager. He's in California. He was candid about his journey to note investing. He was very transparent about his journey and recovery as well. Him and I share about the same amount of time. And so he dropped some pearls of wisdom. And he just said to be confident and ambitious and do what you want, but most of all, network with the people that you want to emulate and the people who have gone before you to achieve the things that you wanted to achieve. That's on a material level. But Richard is very spiritual, loves God, and we have that in common. And then we have Alain Mangion, who is in Malta, who is the CEO of Credit Invest. He is an investment banker. He's fantastic. He does work all over Africa. He was kind enough to come discuss his endeavors, what trends are currently in Africa. And there's more content from these two individuals. And we talked about which sectors are the most interesting in Africa. And then we have my beloved friend, Robin Caral Shaw. We talked about mediation. Mediation is pertinent to me because I am a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator and I have a master's in conflict analysis and resolution. So her and I engage on the topic of mediation, the benefits of it, and why someone should consider mediation before going to litigation. So for me, I am all about peacekeeping and just really resolving conflicts and bringing more stability and more harmony on the planet. That's really for me what mediation and arbitration is, because I think a courtroom can be conducive to a lot of chaos and a lot of competition. Whereas mediation, there's a balanced perspective as to how you can achieve some kind of mutually beneficial outcome. I love it. That's why I studied it. My father was an attorney and a diplomat, and he believed in communication. He thought I communicated a little too much, but I was his baby. I was his baby, which is why he knew when I was born, I was his baby, which is why he asked his boss, General Gracia Jacques, who was the head of the military at the time, to be my godfather. I guess he knew I had power in me and I would need to have powerful people around me. But anyway, I love my goddaddy. And so my father knew that he said to me before he passed that it was too late for him, but not too late for me. And what he meant was, he was drinking alcoholically because he was so deeply sad about his retirement and also the fact that Bill Clinton abolished the military in Haiti. And he was very saddened by that because that was his life. And so he told me it was too late. But then got the gift. I learned from that and I got the gift of recovery in 25 years. Here we are. And then of course, that's mediation. And then the chaos with Vipassana. When I had 5 years of sobriety, I came across a practice in the UK. This is after in 2004, I decided I was going to boycott the US election because they dropped bombs in Iraq. And I decided I was going to find my journey. I don't need the US anymore because they're warmongering. And I had just finished my master's. And I decided, you know what? Again, I truly feel it was divinely inspired that I just sell my house in Miami and just move across the world to England, not knowing anyone, not knowing what I was going to do. But what I did do is go to spiritual centers, and it was at one of those centers that I actually found Vipassana, that somebody suggested that I go sit a course of Vipassana. Of course, I couldn't stop talking. If you've listened to the last episode that was released, I just looked around. I felt like I was still a tourist, just looking around the sightsee and saying, "Oh my goodness, what a beautiful place!" And talking to the teacher that day and saying, "What's next?" I was a banker back then, and I was just like trying to control the situation, and saying, "I don't know what these people are doing here, but I'm keep my eyes open until I figure it out." But you know what? Best thing I ever did. I went on to serve in a center for 3 months in Texas. My mother lived in Texas at the time. My brother was still alive. She wanted to be close. This is what I did in 2005, and I was engaged to an Englishman, and in England at the time, left him behind, and we decided he was gonna wait for me until I finished this journey I was going through inward. And so, lovely chap he was, didn't work out because I needed more meditation and he wasn't willing to wait any longer. But anyway, we moved on. So we did have another episode with Richard Mason. So with Richard, we dove deeper into note investing. And so thereafter was just basically the same. Richard talked about, again, note investing and what it's like from being a fund manager to note investing. And he went deeper into his personal journey. And then we had an episode on narcissism, one of my favorite topics. I am determined not to make this channel a focus of narcissists. I could write books, PhDs, not on the clinical side, but just on personal experience. So you will hear me talk throughout my podcast about real life experience of people who are narcissists, who are still existing in a bubble. They think that they're much better than everybody else. They think for whatever reason, because I am, and I'm going to be straightforward because Hades has colorism, and I'm going to be straightforward about that. Some of these people believe that, and it's interesting, my whole family kind of like came out lighter than I. And so there's that dynamic where the narcissism comes from that. And that's me, frankly speaking, with Sendra D. So that dynamic comes from that. And those people born out of wedlock, whether they were born out of wedlock to my uncle, whether they were born out of wedlock to my dad, they somehow think they're better than me. Well, you know what? You're not. And so this is just that's why. And my parents were narcissists, and I'm not going to lie about it. My sister was a narcissist, but again, they're a product of their environment. I do believe that part of Haiti's culture is intertwined with narcissism because it is a culture, it is a class system. And so it is important for us to look at narcissism when we look at people in very high ranking positions in Haiti. It does require survival of the fittest. And of course, trauma response is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And with narcissism, I do believe there's a lot of trauma that happened to these people that caused them to become what they are. Vampires, really, that's what they are, vampires. They suck the life out of other people. They want what you have and they will not stop until they get it, whether it's your name, whether it's photo albums. I mean, that's not gonna bring your dad back. I mean, it's like, well, I had my whole life with him, but you know what? We had our differences. But so these individuals think that they can take things from me and still feel like they're a good person. Well, that's between you and your maker. I just know that what causes these people to behave the way they do is because they are narcissists. They are lacking in empathy. They don't understand how their behavior affects other people. So most of these people end up latching on to others either because there's something the other person can provide them. Whether in most of these two individuals' cases, they latched on to very powerful people in the government, which means that they now have power by default. So they didn't accomplish anything themselves, but they latched on to people significantly more powerful in the government. So maybe they need protection, maybe they're scared. My creator protects me every day, and my angels, my sister, my father, my grandparents, especially my grandmothers, powerful women who were born, who had kids out of wedlock. And it's interesting, the Dorcé name, nobody knows the history of that name. They think I came from this powerful family. My grandmothers were, my mother's side was came from an elitist family, of course, an aristocratic family. She had kids out of wedlock, and that's how my mother came about. And her family was like, "No, we don't want you around, so you got to go." So she left, and she was dependent on men, and that's what I vowed not to do. I vowed not to do that, which is why I became the woman I am today. And I knew with any kind of addiction, whether it's sex addiction, whether it is alcohol addictions, drug addiction, whatever, you're going to be dependent on something. And so I decided that I was going to break the family pattern, especially for the women. I was going to educate myself, struggle to have to get those higher degrees, even though I was brainwashed into thinking that I could never achieve anything, that I had to marry rich. And that would have been nice too, but the men were assholes. So I said, no, I don't think so. But anyway, moving on. So that said, I am the woman I am because understanding narcissism, so the dynamic of narcissism causes one to self doubt, to feel unworthy, to feel less than the what wrap on under your shoe. And that's what the narcissist tends to do. They tend to make you feel so devalued that you need them so that you can get stuck to them and go into any domestic abuse situation and you'll find a narcissist more than likely. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful to those people because in my observation of the narcissist and those that I've dated, especially the most recent one, I had to come to terms with the fact that these people just love themselves more above everybody else. And that's what I had to learn. I had to learn to love myself because that's the antidote. The antidote, the cure to narcissistic abuse is to actually love yourself. Because what the narcissist does, it convinces you that you need to love them more than you love yourself. Well, I'm glad I was able to wake up to say that, you know what, as painful as it is, I'm just going to love myself until I can't love myself. I don't know how. I don't really see anyone loving themselves except the narcissist. It's this false sense of love because if they really love, they would be authentic because they are masking themselves, trying to pretend to be something they're not. And they are just scared little people who are insecure and who want to rise, social climb. Most of them are social climbers on the back of others, and they are not willing to do the work because they are just fucking lazy. So that said, frankly speaking with Sendra D cursing again, that's the show. But yeah, so we move on from narcissism because I could talk about this all day, as you could say. So we move on from that, then we move to soldiers. And my father was a soldier, which is why I love talking to Jason Pike. And Jason was someone who had experienced narcissism in his career because they accused him of being a foreign spy, pedophilia. I mean, that's insane. And then they dropped the charges, insanity on steroids. So Jason was candid enough to come and talk about this in his book, A Soldier Against All Odds. So thank you. It was such a profound conversation. And I love just talking about serving in the military because my daddy was that serving. And a lot of people forget that everything you do in life, whether it's my sister used to say, even if you sweep the streets, serving is really what you're there to do because it is your ministry. You are there to make a difference because you have certain skill sets that are unique to you that put you in that role. So therefore, it is a ministry and you have to look at it with honor and dignity. It doesn't matter about the paycheck. I know I'm a bling girl. I love money. But guess what? Service first and then the reward comes later. If you put your heart into something, there is no doubt in my mind that you will rise to the top and be successful. Except as Jason found out, that narcissism wants to keep you down when they feel threatened by you, by whatever. And sometimes you don't even know what it is that they are jealous of. They just decide in their mind that you have something. And like Jason, integrity and love of country was his flaw for in their mind and his supervisors or the leaders that were coming against him. So he learned to persevere and he spent over 30 years in the military. So kudos to you, Jason, and I'll have him back for you again. He has a new book. So stay tuned. He will be back. And then we went on to talk about the Western investors, Africa. We spoke with Looney. We spoke to the founder of Africa Eats, where we talked about his great endeavors in Africa, helping young entrepreneurs rise in the ranks in agribusiness. And that was a fantastic conversation. So I thank you so much, Looney. And it's been amazing. So I so enjoyed your down to earth disposition. We have to do it again very soon. I look forward to it. And then finally, we came back to Vipassana. That's when I talked about me sightseeing at the Vipassana center when I should have had my eyes closed. But yeah, I was not into the eyes closed thing. I was like, okay, I come from a diplomatic family where people, my parents were always telling me, be careful because they're watching us. I'm like, who's watching us? So a little schizophrenia there while I was at the Vipassana center because I was like, oh, right. So is this like a cult? What's going on? But fast forward 20 years of my Vipassana journey, it's changed my life. It saved my life actually, because with all this narcissistic abuse that came up after I stopped drinking, so there was narcissistic abuse before I stopped drinking, and it continued through different people, places, and things afterwards. Because what happened is I did not know what narcissistic abuse was truly up until like 6 years ago. Because I was like, I'm sober, nobody can bother me. But yeah, they can. And because I am that kind of personality, which is an empath, I draw them like so bees to honey. So I had to educate and inform myself as to what that looked like. So Vipassana helped me to become more present, more engaged in my life, and to be very observant rather than reactive. So even though someone is being an a-hole in my experience, I just be present, not reactive. And it's still a work in progress, but Vipassana, my teacher, SN Goenka, who I sat with in 2009 before I sat my first 45-day silent retreat. Yeah, people, I sit 45-day silent retreats. You can do it too. If me, chatty self, can sit silently for 45 days, you can do it too. I highly encourage that practice. So that's Vipassana. And then we, of course, had the brand expert, Michael Doyle, and we talked about brands. And I do believe that the Sendor brand is me. Frankly speaking, with Sendra D is me. I had to own that because being authentic for me is like no I mean, life, my life, because they say in the program, you are sick as your secret. So all the shame that was intertwined in my being that kept me small, that kept me afraid, that kept me paranoid that somebody's going to judge me, that somebody's going to dismiss me, reject me, all of that. That's because deep inside, these secrets that I had that I would feel exposed before I launched this podcast, I was terrified that I would have to be honest with people because when I set out to do this podcast, I know this is very different in 2020 when I first launched the channel. When I did this and when I relaunched in on May 19, 2024, I shook in my bed under the covers saying, oh my God, I'm going to feel like an imposter, being afraid of all people watching me. Well, hopefully a lot of people are watching me, but being afraid of being judged because I was judged. I was given looks, dirty looks, or they didn't approve of how I looked, whatever, because that's why I put so much emphasis on my appearance. And I do believe probably why I chose the career of fashion design because appearance was everything in my family because all eyes were on us for those almost 20 years that my father was in Washington. You had to be perfect all the time, whether we were going to a state function or whether we were going to just a formal, official church outing where my father was always invited to different churches, the Mormon temple, the Haitian church, whatever it was. We were always at holidays, having to show up as a team, my parents and my two siblings and I, to represent Haiti. So those of you who don't think that my family did anything for Haiti, well, you know what? Let's compare back then. My father started serving when I was 3 years old in 71 to when he left in the 80s. So let's talk about then. Let's talk about how Haiti is now. And so, yes, it was service. I was part of that service. And those people who envied me in that role, it was really tough work. My father was like, I don't care what's going on outside because it was snowing outside. If we had to go somewhere, we had to dress up, all three of us kids, and show up. My mother was the dedicated wife. What other woman would have done that? Those women that came around my dad, I don't know, these women riffraffs, they were like wanting my mother's position. It's almost laughable. None of them had the integrity or dedication that my mother had to my father. My father knew that when he went on a mission, whatever country he went to, serving Haiti, my mother would be the CEO of the household, and he had no fear. And my father is the only man my mother ever knew. And so those women were like philandering out there with all these other men, but they had my father on the side talking about, we are so in love with him. And one of them, I think there were a few of them that tried to commit suicide. I don't even know there was so much drama in my story. Let me tell you. So when my mother would go to my godfather's house, and my godbrother will probably remember this, she would just go up the stairs and say to my godfather's wife, oh my dear, you have no idea what's going on. I have new gossip for you. And she would tell us kids, go play outside. So that means that they had something about my father's mistresses. But anyway, so that's the life that I was brought into. So the tears that I saw my mother shed as a result of that, and I can't imagine because I was actually in the womb when after this person was born, one of my father's mistresses had a kid for him. And this womb that my mother carried in had all the trauma, her own trauma. So, which means I ask my therapist all the time, am I carrying this trauma? I think that feeling of betrayal that I experienced, I do feel came all the way from the womb. Anyway, I digress. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. So the last video before this one was the Marine leadership mindset with Richard Walsh. What a phenomenal individual who served his country with dignity. I was trying to trap him into sharing some secrets. And well, he would not. Of course, he's a Marine. You would have to waterboard him to get the information out of him. But guess what? What phenomenal mindset. What amazing leadership. We'll talk about emotional intelligence. Again, going back to that, that is my passion because I do see how people have served with and without. What a difference it is. Can you imagine a world where every leader was an emotionally intelligent leader? Can you imagine that world, what that would look like? In this election that's coming up in 2024, the US presidential election, can you imagine if people actually knew what boundaries were and they would not trespass on each other's personal lives? Can you imagine if we stuck to the agenda of serving the American people? Can you imagine what that would look like? Can you imagine what kind of the United States would create? Because they told me Haiti was corrupt. I didn't know any better. It's like, okay, I'll take it. I'll become an American citizen. My mother filed for me, and I was school age by the time I was in college, by the time my father left, and they applied, and I became an American citizen. Okay, I'm like, okay, Haiti's corrupt. I get that. Check. So I come into this culture, the American culture, and I'm looking around, and I was like, all right, you told me Haiti was corrupt. But what I'm seeing in the United States, it's the same corruption. I will tell you why they're so similar. It's because the people who created the culture of corruption in Haiti, and I'm not saying those Haitians are not corrupt, but had we had emotionally intelligent leaders in the United States, there is not a place on earth that would have corruption. I do say that's my tagline, and come for me if you want to. The United States' greatest export is corruption. They bribe leaders, they bribe everybody on the ground to get their agenda met. And I love this country so much, which is why I'm saying this, what I'm saying now. Emotional intelligence has to be the norm. It's not an outlier like it is now. Like you find one person, oh, they sound so emotionally intelligent. No, it can't just be a tagline or a headline. It has to be the norm. It has to be the norm that when corruption shows up, then you know there's no place for that. And we have to eradicate that. So we have to first eradicate the corruption from the mind of the collective consciousness, which means that those people who have the greed, and the people who are the greediest are the people who have the most. And I'm not saying that I'm immune from that on any given day, but I do want to say that if we were able to understand and accept the fact that there is enough for all of us, there is enough for every single one of the planet. That includes Africa, Haiti, United States. We're talking about Omaha, Nebraska, to Montreal, Canada, to Washington, D.C., to Orange County, to Martha's Vineyard, everywhere, New Delhi, everywhere you stand, there is enough to feed you, to clothe you, to shelter you. Everyone has enough. It is a birthright. It is a divine right. We were meant to be comfortable in our life and to be happy. Now, I've talked about the journey of those 3 months. Let's talk about what's coming now. I've got lots of ideas. So, of course, emotional intelligence is truly my woven in my DNA. I constantly check in to figure out if I'm doing the right thing. That's the way I choose to show up in my life. And so that said, we're going to hear more about emotional intelligence. But guess what? I've got news. You ready? I'm launching a new podcast. Yes, as you know, Bling Girl, I started my career as a fashion designer. I loved clothes. I love everything lavish. I saw it in around me, in my house, and I love shopping. I started shopping Bloomingdale's and all the tops, Neiman Marcus. My mother was a fashionista herself. She had to be as a diplomatic wife. And she always made sure we looked the perfect kind. Now I don't care. If I need leggings, I'll go to Walmart. whatever it is. This is not an advertising for Walmart. But yeah, convenience is definitely part of it. When I go to my ashram, I go to India and I buy clothes off the street in India. I don't have a problem. But I do at my core, love luxury. I love luxury. And so the new podcast is called Sendor's Sacred Spaces with Sendra D, Luxury Unleashed. So stay tuned, everyone. There are a few more other projects that I would love to tell you about too. Maybe I'll be writing. Maybe, who knows? But so this new concept is going to be more clips, shorter clips, including longer form interviews. I will have correspondence on the ground in certain interesting places, including travel. I'm a jet setter. So stay tuned, but also put at the bottom of this video, let me know what you'd love to see on this new podcast and also on Frankly Speaking with Sendra D moving forward. I love you so much. It's been such an amazing journey. I'm still standing. I am not going anywhere. Just know the best is yet to come. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. I want to hear from you. And let me know how these 3 months have impacted you. I'd love to hear from you. Love you so much. Till next time, Sendra D. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D's podcast and join us every week as we uncover the stories of those who triumphed over life-altering challenges to achieve not just financial success, but a richer, a deeper, a more altruistic life. It's about time we redefine what it means to be a truly affluent individual. Don't you agree? So come and join me. And let's be unstoppable on this journey called life. Because here, affluence isn't just a buzzword. It's a path to waking up to your authentic being.